Right, Queen's University is investigating a costume party that I understand was off campus, but involved some of their students after photos surfaced online of racially stereotyped costumes. Are we taking political correctness too far, or are we finally sensitive to the issue of costumes? To talk more about all of this, Gary Dierenfeld is with us, social worker, yoursocialworker.com. He is with us now. Hello, Gary. How are you today?
Good, Scott. Great to be with you again.
Thank you for taking the time. We appreciate this. So from what I know about this party, it was held off campus, but it certainly was involving the students of Queen's University. The party was called Beer Fest, and the theme of the tournament was, the theme of the event was countries of the world. So I guess people were encouraged to dress up as people from other countries in the world. Are we too politically correct or finally sensitive to these costumes?
Well, I'm going to answer that question with a personal history lesson. I grew up Hey, sorry?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I grew up post-World War II, Jewish family, Jewish community. No one in our family would ever drive a German automobile. And it was indirectly, if you will, ingrained in our community, don't trust, don't like Germans. Yeah. Then I grow up and I realize, hey, now that I'm in my 20s, if I'm going to write off a whole group of persons on the basis of my cultural background, isn't that what prejudice and racism is about? And I got to tell you, when I realized that about myself, it made me feel very uncomfortable. And I changed that. So having said this, though, what I want to point out is, first of all, no one wants to be called a racist. No one wants to feel that they are racist. So there's what I call the inadvertent racist by accident. And when I look at this thing at Queen's University, sometimes people engage in activities without the sensitivity, not because they're bad people, but just because they don't realize how this can impact on others. So I don't know that there was any intent to hurt people, but inadvertently, people still get hurt by these actions. I think that's what's going on. It's inadvertent, yet it is still racism, and that's why we have to examine ourselves very closely about our own attitudes.
So, safe to say that you can't have a party that is a theme of countries of the world, then?
Depends on how that's enacted and whether it's done in a celebratory way. So, I've had potluck dinners with friends where, bring something from your culture, and nothing is being mocked, it's being celebrated. So, again, that intent matters. Let's change the context of this party, and let's say, hey, let's all get dressed like Scott Thompson or Scott Thompson's mother. Mm-hmm. And in so doing, we're doing it in caricature. Might you like that? Might you not like that?
Are you asking me?
Nope.
I don't know. If you can find track pants and a pantsuit, you've got the Thompsons down.
But what I want people to appreciate is if it was them personally, somehow or other, being put on display in a way that you felt wasn't flattering to you, without your, in a sense, consent, how would you feel about that? So sometimes we need to make these situations more personal so people can relate to the experience of others better.
Well, I had the same discussion when we were talking about, during the baseball season, we were talking about the Cleveland Indians logo and the Chief Wahoo thing. And again, that was my point of view, is if you want to know what offends somebody, ask the person whose caricature is on the logo. So I guess I have to use the same philosophy here. Ask the person whose costume is being used in this party. when I was talking about the logo, to me the logo was a cartoon character, and I don't know anybody in the Native community that likes that.
Right.
And that was my reasoning for saying, well, then why would you do it? Why would you do it? Can we apply the same thing here, and does it depend on the way that it is done more than a blanket kind of decision that, theoretically you can't do a party with the theme being countries of the world?
Right. I think we have to look at how it's done. We have to look at that intent. I'm Jewish. And, when I think of dressing up in somebody else's garb, costume, I think, hey, what's the big deal? But if I were to look at somebody who, dressed themselves up to look traditionally as an Orthodox Jew,
mm-hmm.
I got to tell you, viscerally, I'd find that very offensive.
Mm-hmm.
So we sometimes talk about empathy. Empathy is all about being able to walk a mile in the other person's shoes, not your own shoes, thinking about the other person. You're actually in that other person's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at this situation, there's where that insensitivity comes from. But again, I think we'll do better helping people to understand this stuff, not by attacking them, but by helping them to understand that this is an inadvertent, and I really like that word, an inadvertent curse that you're creating in others.
So is going to a party of the world dressed as a monk as offensive as going to a party dressed in blackface?
I got to apologize, Scott. Your producer has said that there's kind of a ghost in the system with a lot of echo, and it's quite active right now, and I can't understand you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to put you on hold, and we'll come right back. It is 12:44. It's 900 CHML. I'm Scott Thompson, talking about a party at Queen's University. They're investigating a off-campus party, which was the theme countries of the world. People would dress up in various costumes, including monks, Mexican wrestlers, Arab men, and such. Gary Dierenfeld is with us, social worker, yoursocialworker.com. We're asking, are we too politically correct or finally sensitive to the issue of costumes? And Gary is with us now. Gary, I hope that line is sounding better for you.
Yeah, right now it sounds crystal clear. Thank you.
All right, so sorry about that. So my last question to you was, a party like costumes of the world not acceptable anymore?
I think they can be acceptable. I think it has to have a sense of inclusiveness. If we want it to be themed and funny, if somebody's going to portray, let's say, Jewish, maybe I should be the one portraying Jewish, right? Because it's me. I mean, let's look at this in the States and the use of the N-word. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For African Americans. It's one thing if me, the white person, says that. It's another thing if somebody else, the African-American person, says that.
Mm-hmm.
So we can kind of own our own stuff, but if other people are doing that on our behalf, it's not working so well.
Mm.
And that's just a sensitivity. This is the beauty for me being in Canada, is that I'd like to think that as a nation, as a country, as a people, we are inviting and we are more sensitive than many other countries that don't have our degree of cross-cultural, folks from all over the world. But it's a process, Scott. It's a process of people learning, and some folks who will grow up where there's less diversity. They may not have friends from these other cultures. They may not have learned, in a sense, how these things can be offensive. So I don't want to admonish the people. I want to teach the people. I want to educate, inform. I don't want to call them names, because in calling them names, then they're reacting to the name. They feel defensive, and there's no opportunity for learning.
And that's, I guess, what Queens is trying to do with this, is turning it into some sort of teaching moment. So a kilt and bagpipes are out? A Mexican sombrero and poncho is out?
It's all about intent, isn't it? But we can still do the theme, people of the world. We can do it respectfully, not mockingly.
But you have to dress up as your own culture?
I think when we put it out there, if you want to know how you're coming across, and you said this a little earlier, ask the folks from the other cultures who may be represented.
Right.
Get their input.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't know how it's going to be perceived, ask. Great solution. It's a great solution.
It is, really, when you stop to ponder it. So where does this leave this discussion? How do you balance this?
Well, you know, the other thing is all this comes on the heels of the U.S. election.
Mm-hmm.
All this comes on the heels of a lot of hate-mongering that was done. This comes on the heels of some of the alt-right posters being seen this week or last week at McMaster University campus. And so as a society, right now, we're even more hypersensitive, hypervigilant to issues of racism. So I think we're going to have a lot more examples and a lot more discussions like you and I are having today. I think these discussions are needed, and hopefully this is being educative to our general public, and this is what we have to do.
Have we become a land of extremes? It seems that it's alt-right, it's alt-left. Where's the happy center gone?
Yeah, no kidding, eh? And so hopefully we can become more centrist. But, you know, when, you know, there's a dynamic. The more one pushes in one direction, we feel we have to counterbalance by pushing just as hard in the opposite direction. And the truth of the matter is, we don't need to push back that hard. We still need to maintain our centrist view. And that's why I'm going to come back to this Queen's University thing. Please don't label them racist.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably well-intentioned persons who didn't realize the impact on others. I don't think they woke up that day and said, let's have a party that's going to inflame Canada. Who would want that? And that's why I like the word inadvertent.
So anybody...
But that's keeping that more neutral, centrist view rather than, you know, is it racist or not racist, which is so polarizing.
So for those that dressed up, including me, like Donald Trump for Halloween, same thing? Okay, maybe my Donald Trump was a little off-center, as they say. But is that politically incorrect? Because theoretically, I'm offending Trump supporters. Yeah,
you are offending Trump supporters. And we're going to have protests going on, and there's going to be these effigies, you know, these stand-ins, you know, the like the scarecrows kind of thing. And is that wrong? Gee whiz, I'm going to have to ponder that one long after we're off the phone. But I think a lot depends on our intent and how we use it. But again, I hope we actually keep the discourse about the behavior without trashing people.
Doesn't Saturday Night Live do this in the form of satire when they show sure Hillary and Donald doing their thing?
But I think what Saturday Night Live does and tries to do is tries to reflect our society back to us versus simply mocking our society. They're trying to give us a window on ourselves, hopefully, versus just trashing. So while on the one hand they had Donald Trump, on the other hand they also had Hillary Clinton. And they provided caricatures of both persons and the responses by the general public to both persons in those caricatures. And again, their comedy typically works because they're trying to give us a satirical look at ourselves and at our society with hopefully not just trashing a particular person.
But if you're a Trump supporter, you're obviously upset with what's happening on Saturday Night Live. Donald Trump himself has spoke out that he's not happy with it at Saturday Night Live.
So some of these things come across more personal versus political and about the behavior. And let's face it, there are some persons for whom the political is very personal and want to do anything they can to support a particular point of view, and they're going to take exception to anything that contradicts that point of view. But I think that's a whole different discussion than, coming dressed representing the countries of the world.
That being said, obviously, if you're being politically correct, you're not going to offend Donald Trump supporters. I mean, I don't think Hillary Clinton supporters are offended by the character or the comedian that does her. Why are we, obviously this hits a nerve with the Trump supporters. Does political correctness seem to work more for the left than it does the right?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know, but Hillary Clinton came out with that line, the basket of deplorables. And let me tell you, that was a big error in judgment on her part.
Mm-hmm.
Because there she is trashing people specifically versus policy and behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we want to be respectful, we want to keep the level of discourse at policy and behavior. That's, again, I've said this before, that's why I like Michelle Obama. When they go low, we go high.
Yeah.
And what she meant is what I just said. We're going to keep the level of discourse about behavior and policy, not the person.
Gary Dierenfeld has been with us, social worker, yoursocialworker.com, talking about Queen's University investigating a costume party that happened regarding some of their students. Gary, thanks for the time and insight, as always. Much appreciated.
I got to tell you, you asked some really thought-provoking questions, and I so enjoyed chatting with you, Scott.
I appreciate that, Gary. Yeah. We're spreading the love, buddy.
Take care.
Thanks, Gary. It is 12:56.